to Tokyo Game Life, a Tokyo-based video game podcast focusing on Nintendo and gaming culture in Japan's capital. Your host, Mono, here to bring you a slice of gaming life from Tokyo. Returning guest and Denios developer Christophe Galati joins the podcast to chat about Tako no Himitsu, a GBA-inspired JRPG. We talk about the game's development origins in Japan, octopi powers, and how to get iconic musicians to contribute to your project. For the feature, I take you inside Pokemon Fit Shop XY, a limited-time pop-up shop that brings you back to Kalos. And I'll close out with a bit of news highlighting a lot of upcoming gaming events right here in Japan. Let's start with Christophe Galati and Tako no Himitsu. We're going to lead off with the game section today as we talk about Tako no Himitsu, Ocean of Secrets, an upcoming GBA-inspired JRPG. Joining me is a special guest. So guest, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Christophe Galati. Maybe you remember me from this podcast when I talked about my first game, Save Me Mr. Tako. But I'm the developer of Tako no Himitsu, and I'm back on the podcast to talk about it as we are launching our Kickstarter campaign pretty soon.
Welcome back to the podcast. Yes, you joined me a few years ago, actually. It seemed like not that long ago, but it was maybe 2 or so years ago, where we talked about your first game, Save Me Mr. Tako, which was a Game Boy-inspired platformer adventure. And now you've got a brand new game on the horizon. So give the listeners the pitch. What is Tako no Himitsu, Ocean of Secrets?
So Tako no Himitsu, Ocean of Secrets kind of has the same art intention as to pay homage to a specific era of gaming. So with Tako, I did the Game Boy, and now I'm doing the Game Boy Advance. But basically, yeah, it's like an action RPG, kind of Golden Sun meets Terranigma. And yeah, my main goal is to talk about secrets and trauma, and through the eyes of like a rich cast of characters. Like you can play more than 6 characters in the game, and they all have a unique path that you can see when the story unfolds. So yeah, it talks about secrets, trauma, very dark stuff, but yeah, with a colorful aesthetic and a nice gameplay. And the others from the cast, like it's an action game, so you conduct a real-time battle, but you can switch characters on the fly, like just press a button and you'll switch between the 3 characters of your party. And you can also pair octopuses, like because the game is the sequel of Save Me Mr. Tako, so octopuses are back. So you can pair octopuses to character and use octopuses to do magic spells. And kind of in the same fashion of Golden Sun, the spells are usable in battle, but also in puzzle when you are exploring. Like for example, the heal spell, you can heal yourself with it, but you can also make plants grow and stuff like that. You'll have a huge world to explore and with cool characters and octopuses.
Tell me about the origins of its development. Did you start working on this game right after your first title?
Yes, basically, Tako was first released in 2018. Like October 2018, and in 2019 I got the chance to be selected in an artist residency program in Japan. So I went to Villa Kujoyama in Kyoto. So early 2019 I got to spend 5 months in Kyoto to start the development of this game, which was a huge opportunity for me, especially after being kind of burned out after the first one. I got the chance to live in the forest in Japan and just focus on the new game and on myself, what I wanted to do and create. Tako was already personal, but this one is even more personal in terms of themes and messages I want to talk about. But yeah, it started in Japan. So that's why this one I'm confident in keeping the Japanese name because Tako had a Japanese name at first, but publishers told me to change it for a Western audience. So this time I didn't. So yes, that's why the game is called Tako no Himitsu, because we wanted to have Tako as it's the sequel of Tako and it's the IP. But the main theme is really secrets and how these secrets turn into secrets. And these secrets are used by people in power to rule the world, basically. And in the game, they are manifesting in form of shadow monsters, those secrets and trauma. So that's all tied together, and the world has secrets, the character has secrets. Everything is like you'll unlock layers after layers while you play. So it's very like in a JRPG fashion. It's very story driven, but it's still an action RPG. Like we wanted to have kind of a light aspect, kind of like we have in Quintet games, like Illusion of Gaia or Terranigma.
Right.
The gameplay is kind of simple, but it's supported by a strong story, I feel, and a specific mood. And we really wanted to go for that mood. And yes, the whole aesthetic. But in our case, we don't have one playable character. We have like 6.
Since development started in Kyoto, can we expect any sort of Kyoto-related references or influence on the game?
Oh yes, of course. My games were always inspired by Japanese game as a whole because I grew up playing a lot of them. But yeah, basically, like the residency I was in, like Villa Kujoyama, is kind of almost replicated as it is really in the game. You can go to this place at one point. So a very place very inspired by it. The game as is in itself. Basically, like I'm really gravitating towards the drag culture, drag artists, drag queens, drag king, stuff like that, since quite a while. And in Kyoto, I got to see drag queens while I was in the residency. So some of them are basically appearing as cameo in the game as well. And also, like my personal experience, like as you may know, and I may have talked about it in the first podcast, but for Mr. Tako, things were not really good with the publisher I had back in that time. So the game also talk about those issues with power dynamics between artist and the publisher through one of the character. Also, yeah, like each character bear a theme, and most of them are inspired by my own life. So yeah, it really will be a very personal but still deep game, and a lot of things I saw in my life and in Japan will be translated in it.
Yeah, it's quite literally a generational leap for you, going from Game Boy and now Game Boy Advance in terms of inspiration. Did you always have this sort of roadmap where your first game was going to be similar to the Game Boy, then your next game was going to be GBA, and maybe your next title will be DS, and so on?
Yes, that's kind of the goal actually, because when I started Saving Mr. Taco, I was quite young. I was 19 years old. And it was kind of like a learning process to master era of gaming. And I had kind of a very rough childhood and teenage years. Like I had a lot of family issues. But I actually like finally sorted this year. Like I won my trial against my family this year. So I had a lot of issues growing up, and game are what helped me survive, I feel. Because yeah, it's going kind of dark, but but yeah, I was kind of living with death on my side, like saying like I want to die basically. But at first I was like, but before dying, I want to finish beating this game, because one of my brother was a game collector, so he had a huge collection. It was my way out of what I was experiencing. But and as I survived, it was like first it was playing a game, then it was making my game, and basically like it's how I arrived in the game industry years after years, making games to express myself and survive, because I feel as a survivor I have a responsibility to talk about stuff. So that's how I went into game industry, and basically how I make games. And so yeah, that's why when I was making Tako, the goal of paying homage to these specific eras of gaming that helped me was already there. So yeah, I want to make games that can help people the way games helped me. That's my goal deep inside. So yeah, I wanted to use those aesthetics because I feel like those retro aesthetics are very good to make players use their imagination. Because we see a lot of discourse about realism in games, and people saying that you need great graphics for the game to be immersive. But I feel like retro aesthetic were very immersive because you had to imagine a lot of things in your head. So I kind of want to replicate that, but using those retro aesthetic with my personal stories and experience. So even though it looks retro in terms of meanings and the world display inside the game, it's very modern. So it's basically kind of like an inverted chrono capsule. Like you find a game, you think it's from the past, but it's modern for the time. So that's the mood right from Tako. And when I saw Tako was doing well, I guess, it kind of stick with me for at least a trilogy. I think I will see in 10 years if I still do games. But the goal was really to create a strong IP with iconic characters and make it evolve in the gaming history.
Now, you're really pitching this as a GBA-inspired game, which you explained the origins of it, and not as, for example, an SNES game or a Genesis game. So what would you say is maybe the key indicator in terms of gameplay or visuals between the GBA and the Super Nintendo, for example?
Well, from my personal experience, I'm most drawn to GBA because it was the console I own. So I was more drawn to them. But yeah, in terms of aesthetic, it's very, very close. actually. And the resolution is not the same. The Super Nintendo is 4:3 ratio, but GBA is more rectangular, I guess. I don't know how to say that. But it's not the same resolution. We don't have as much inputs also. GBA only have A, B. They don't have Y and X button. So they don't have the same amount of buttons. The resolution is not the same, and I guess the colors are maybe a bit more vibrant, but it was mostly due to the screen, I guess. But the GBA was basically sold at the time as a portable SNES. But the thing that is less good on the GBA than the SNES is the sound chip.
Right, of course.
GBA is infamous for that. So we had a lot of debates of how close we are to the original material in our sounds. So yeah, it was hard to decide. So basically we choose both. Like in the game, you have the option to switch between instrumental music and retro music. So yeah, that's the things about GBA, I guess. But yeah, for me, it's basically because it was the console I had when I was a teenager. So that's basically the one where I started to have my own taste in game. Before that, I was mostly playing the game my brother had. But when I got the GBA, I was starting to have my own games. So basically, the first one I beat not my brother was Golden Sun. So that's why it's a very special game for me because it was my thing.
Yeah, Golden Sun that's another game series I really like, but there hasn't been a lot of new games that have come out recently where I think, oh, that's really inspired by Golden Sun. But when I see Tako no Himitsu, I definitely see the Golden Sun inspirations. And I think there's definitely a lot of people who want a new Golden Sun game, or at least something similar to it. And are you more of a fan of the original Golden Sun or the sequel, The Lost Age?
I think I prefer the Lost Age due to level design. But yeah, I think the Lost Age had a very different mood. Golden Sun 1 is very straightforward, and it was a big twist to have playing the villain, which were not the villain, in Golden Sun 2. And Golden Sun 2, as it's called the Lost Age, is more going through the roots of the world and the mythology and the civilization kind of stuff, which I feel I'm more drawn to that as I love mythology, I love archaeology, stuff like that. So in Golden Sun 1, you are basically going from town to town and exploring environments. In Golden Sun 2, you're more into ruins, very magical places, which I like more. And the ending is in the second one where both party joins and the ending is very good. So yeah, I think I like the second game more. For the third game is more hard because you can see in the game that they had to cut a lot of stuff. They try to do a bit of both because you have the ancient civilization rising in the third game, and you go from town to town like in the first one, but it's a bit a rushed game, I guess. But it was still good, I think, even though it kind of killed the series. But maybe we can have a fourth game one day because it ended in a big cliffhanger.
Exactly. Or you can just play Tako no Himitsu and maybe you will have the same feeling as a new Golden Sun.
The magic system is very Golden Sun, and we have Motoi Sakuraba on board to make some musics. But for me, yeah, it's more drawn to the melancholy of Illusion of Gaia, Terranigma, in the feel of the way you control your character. It's more like those games. But on top of that, you have like a big JRPG party like in Final Fantasy VI, I guess, with a very diverse character, not one main character somehow. And yeah, each character is different. And like in Final Fantasy VI, sometimes the party splits, so you have to choose the character you want to play in which order. And so you are basically stuck with some characters sometimes. So yeah, it's how I did with Tako. Like I take a few things from a lot of games and try to make a new one with it. Something Japanese games do a lot, I feel, compared to Western games.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Since Tako no Himitsu has an action-style battle system, was there ever any thought about making like a more traditional turn-based JRPG structure in terms of battles, or were you always set on making it an action RPG?
Yeah, and there were times because I mostly programmed the game myself. And I did it for Tako as well, but compared to Tako, AI are much more complex for Tako no Himitsu. So I had a bit of struggle programming that. So now I work with another developer to help me with those things. But yeah, at some point, sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm really struggling to get the action really feeling good. So going turn-based could help.
Right.
But yeah, I'm a huge turn-based RPG player. But my goal was always to take a console, and like as long as I evolve in console, going more and more towards turn-based JRPG. So I guess my next game will be one.
Maybe, yes.
But if I manage to succeed with this one, but I feel like it could have been a turn-based JRPG, but I really wanted to have the action feel of Terranigma and the Illusion of Gaia.
So you mentioned it earlier. This is kind of, I guess, a sequel to Save Me, Mr. Tako. How much of a sequel is it? Does it start directly after the first game, for example, or is it set hundreds of years later? Or tell me more about the setting of the game.
When the game is starting, it's like 800 years after Save Me, Mr. Tako. So a lot of things happened since then. But so yeah, it's a direct sequel when you like the town you are in the new game are the same as in Tako, but they evolved a lot. Like the geopolitics is very much different. So basically, if you played the first game, you might recognize some stuff like some town names, places names, and even some characters are like the heirs of the one of Save Me, Mr. Tako. Stuff like that. And even gameplay wise, like some game mechanics are back from the first game, even though it's not the same kind of game. Like some spells are inspired by the hats we have in Tako. But so it's a sequel, but you don't have to, if you haven't played Save Me Mr. Tako, it's okay. You don't have to play it to understand the game. But if you have played it, there will be things that will be easier to figure out, I guess, in terms of story. Because there is an implication in like how Save Me Mr. Tako ends is the key of what happened in the centuries after that. But basically, Tako no Himitsu, when the Tako no Himitsu starts, octopus have kind of been erased from history. Nobody know what an octopus is, and there is no octopuses anymore. So that's why when your character find one in a sealed void, very weird, you don't know what it is. But the army kind of follow him because of that. So you'll see in the game. But yeah, octopuses have basically been erased from history since then. So it's one of the big secrets of the world. So you have to uncover what happened. And but basically the whole cast of playable character will also get to discover that, as for them they didn't know what an octopus was before that. And in the world of Save Me Mr. Tako, there was a war between humans and octopuses, and people don't remember that. Only the people in power know that. And basically it's kind of like in our current world, like we have the UN nation in our world, and in the game, the world of the game, we have the Circle, which is basically an alliance of all the world leaders who rewrote history and maintain peace. So the world have been in peace since 800 years. But after the octopuses were genocide, basically. So there's a lot of to uncover about that, and why some octopuses were sealed. Where are the octopuses remaining somewhere? Basically, the whole geopolitical situation of the game world is very tense. Because wild animals are disappearing, shadow monsters are appearing everywhere due to the trauma of the world. And it's also like there is an presidential election in one of the country. There is a lot of stuff.
Right.
But it's like it will be packed in an action game. So hopefully it will help people be more immersed in all of that.
You also recently announced that Motoi Sakuraba and Masanori Hikichi will be contributing music to the game. Sakuraba, of course, famous for dozens, maybe hundreds of games, Star Ocean, Mario Golf, Dark Souls, and yes, Golden Sun. Hikichi has also worked on Terranigma, Danganronpa, and many other games. How did they get involved with Tako no Himitsu?
So basically, I love those games. They are my main references. So at one point, like when it was decided we are going to do a Kickstarter, it became like for us, it would be a good way to get to be a stretch goal, like having more music from them, because it's a budget we don't necessarily had in the past to hire them directly. But I wanted to have some guest track from them because I love the games they worked on, and my Tako no Himitsu is inspired by those games, so it could be a nice thing. So personally, I wanted it. And because they're not the principal composer, the one who is handling most of the soundtrack is the one who made the Save Me Mr. Tako soundtrack, Marc-Antoine Archier. So he did basically the most of the soundtrack. But we wanted to have some guest track as well. And basically what happened, it took a lot of time to reach to them. So basically, I has a website with a form to contact him. So I tried in English, in Japanese, and I never got any answer for like a year or two.
Oh, wow.
And at one point, like I wrote to him on Instagram, and on Instagram, like you can't message, people can't see your message, like to write to them, they have to have approved the message.
Yeah.
Like, and what happened, like, is what, like in 2016, Sakuraba went to Paris in France to do a concert. And so at that time, I sent him a message, like I answered to one of his stories to tell, like, I enjoy Paris. And he liked the message at that point. So I could basically write to him on Instagram thanks to that message.
Oh, wow.
Almost 10 years ago. So I did that. And he told me, like, write to me, because I think it was his wife handling an Instagram account. So she told me, like, write through the website. And I told them that I already did it twice. And they realized there was an issue on their website, basically, thanks to me. So due to that, they were like, oh, yeah, thank you for letting us know. And of course, like, we will make a music for you. So that kind of helped, I guess. So thanks to having a bit of knowledge in Japanese, I reached to him on myself. And now I'm working with an interpret to help. But yeah, I reached to him like that. And he already made one music for the games that you'll see in the demo and you saw on the teaser, I guess, online, which is the boss battle music, which is very Golden Sun like.
Yeah.
But the leitmotif of Tako no Himitsu is in it, so it's ours. But in the meantime, while waiting for Sakuraba to answer, I contacted other composers, including Ikichi, and basically, like, he answered. But when Sakuraba answered, I was like, well, now we have Sakuraba, so that's the one we work with. But Masanori Ikichi kept writing to me about the game, like that he wanted to work on it. So yeah, in the end, he also made tracks for it.
Cool.
So we have both. Why not both, I guess?
Yeah, why not?
And thankfully, because making games is expensive, and as I said, like, it was quite hard financially due to issues at some point. So no, Tako is bringing me money, and I basically created my game company last year, a proper game company. So due to that, I managed last year to earn public funding in France, which helped me hiring a team. So now I'm not alone on the game anymore. And that's how I basically had enough to pay for a guest composer as well. But there will be a stretch goal in the Kickstarter to have more music for them, of course.
Yeah, let's get into it. You recently launched a Kickstarter for the game. So why go the Kickstarter route?
Well, at first I didn't want it to make a Kickstarter, but the game industry is what it is now. So basically I was kind of naive, I guess. But when in 2022, when I had the first demo of Tako no Himitsu ready, like a vertical slice, I went to basically most of the publishers I wanted to work with. And I was thinking, like, I already made one game that is quite known, I feel. Like it was covered a lot by press and streamers when it launched. So I felt like it would be easier this time to get funding than the publisher. And turns out we are in the post-COVID crisis.
Right.
So there is like a lot of people being fired everywhere, and publishers are not invested any money anymore. Or you have to prove them the game popularity in order for them to invest in it. So the way to prove the popularity is to be very viral publicly, have many Steam wish lists. For example, if you have a lot of Steam wish lists because they know that if you have like 10,000 wish lists, they know how many units will sold at launch. Basically, they can project themselves. And the issue for me was that Tako did very well on the Switch, but did not do well on Steam.
Right.
So when people Google Emio Tako on Steam and sees that it only had like 30 reviews, it doesn't like make them confident that my next game will do well on Steam. Even though Tako sold very well on Switch. And you don't have this kind of you can't do this kind of projection on the Switch eShop,
right?
Because it's very more obscure than Steam in terms of data. And nowadays everything is like data oriented. Like you need to have data to prove that you will sell, otherwise people don't invest. So yeah, most of the publishers told me, "No, the game is good, but we don't know if we can sell it." Even though there are plenty of examples of action RPG or indie JRPGs that do very well. But basically most of them had to go to Kickstarter, like Eastward did Kickstarter, Undertale did it, Crosscode did it, Chain Echoes, Sea of Stars. Most of the indie JRPG did Kickstarter actually. So basically many publishers told me, like, do a Kickstarter, and if it succeeds, maybe we'll sign your game. So they kind of pushed me that direction, I guess. So we did it. So we are doing it due to that. But at first I didn't want to do that because like for me it's basically putting all the risk on myself, I guess, and not on the publishers that should take those risks if they trust in the game. But that's how the industry is nowadays. So, and hopefully if the campaign do really, really well, I won't have to rely on a publisher at all,
right.
I guess. But yeah, that's how it is.
Yeah, I recently talked to another indie developer, the developer of Shashingo, who also had a Kickstarter, and he said, "Oh, every indie dev should just do a Kickstarter, no matter what." So I think that's definitely getting a more popular option. So tell me about some of the goals and rewards for the Kickstarter. It's live now if you're listening to this, listeners. So check it out. But go ahead and tell us the rundown about the rewards and what we can expect from the Kickstarter.
Oh yeah, I guess it's pretty like what we can expect from an indie Kickstarter. Basically, you can have the base digital game, you can have the Switch digital game as well, but you can also already pre-order physical version of the game, only the base game, but also a collector edition with an art book and keychains, stickers. So you can have that. There are also some bundle where you can design an NPC, design a boss, design a side quest in the game. There are a few like that. They are a bit more expensive and they are very limited, but you can also like take part in the project this way. But yeah, there will also be stretch goals, like as I mentioned, more music from some composers, more like a bonus character. Like we have 6 playable characters, but there are more I want to do. So that's our stretch goals. So stuff like that, like a new game plus, bonus dungeons. Those are stretch goals that will be announced if we reach the initial goal. So yeah, there will be a lot of stuff like that. And we're also publishing a demo alongside the Kickstarter already. So you'll be able to try the game already, which might help also with the Kickstarter. But yeah, there will be a few bundles, but it's basically what it is for most of indie Kickstarter, I guess. Nothing spectacular or very different than those things. But yeah, the physical bundle, like we have mock-ups of it. And yeah, I already want it on my shelf. So.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. I guess the top 2 highest tiers are executive producer credit and yes, be featured as an NPC. So I am tempted to maybe make you put like a podcaster NPC in the game. So I need to think about that. Are you planning on finding a publisher after the Kickstarter is finished, or do you plan to just self-publish the game?
I guess it will depend because like we are trying to raise $50,000 with the Kickstarter, but it won't be enough to make the full game at all. So for me, my goal is like to go step by step. Like last year, I started the game company. I managed to get money for the pre-production of the game, thanks to being in France. So now I pay a team to work with me. But yeah, the goal like is to raise money with the Kickstarter. With this money, ask again for other public funding, and hopefully have a publisher to put inside the game what remain. Because basically, like the game is budgetized like $300,000. So basically, I raised like a tier of it already on my own. I hope I get the second tier, and there will be remain the last tier that I hope a publisher will. But if the Kickstarter does really well, we won't need that, I guess.
Are you aiming for a simultaneous release on PC and consoles, or will you go PC first, then consoles, or is it just too early to tell?
If I can, I'll do both PC and console. But we are talking about Switch again still. But by the time the game is finished, it will be Switch 2, I guess, whatever it will be called. But yeah, we will see. But yeah, I hope I definitely want the game to be on a Nintendo system. And hopefully at launch, that's what we did with Semi Mr. Tako. So hopefully we can do that as well this time.
So when can we expect Tako no Himitsu to be in our hands?
Well, when this podcast will drop, you can already have the demo in your hand.
Yes, that's true.
Which is like more than 1 hour of gameplay. And then, yeah, for now, I'm aiming for 2026 for the GBA 25th anniversary, which is on 2026. But as always, it will depend on the fundings and if I can hire a team that can work with me all the way. Like right now, I have a team, but everyone is a freelancer. Because I don't have enough saving to properly hire people.
Right.
So hopefully that's something that will change in the future and we can really secure a fixed team. That will be great. That will be the ideal. And to keep that team for the next game as well. It would be cool to make it stable in time. But for that, you need money. Both Tako and Tako no Himitsu need to sell. So maybe the Kickstarter will do very well. We've seen example of that, but it can also fail. Hopefully, it won't fail. And if it succeeds, hopefully, we have enough to find a good balance to work on the game properly and effectively. Like basically, the code base is here. We have a few things to rework, as always, but you can already play the game. Most of the systems and the features are already in. So hopefully now it will be mostly making the content, which is already planned. So yeah, hopefully things can really start now.
All right, final question. If one of the characters from Tako no Himitsu becomes a playable fighter in Smash Brothers, who would you want it to be and what kind of moves would they have?
Yeah, hard to say, but because we have very diverse characters, like some of them are are kind of like free classes. You have protectors that can't attack but can reflect any attacks. You have warriors that can attack, and you have the creators that do special damage and can also boost the team. So basically, like a weapon triangle stuff. We have that. But I guess the most unique character we have is the one with the drag queen. I guess that's something you don't have a lot in games. So I guess this one will be the most unique. But right now, the one with the character design that is more striking out, I guess, is the one with the star on his face and the blue hair. But he has the protector class, so not sure. But I guess it will, if the character is in Smash Bros, it would be like kind of like Rosalina. You'll have the character and the octopus, I guess.
Yes, of course.
As they are paired in the game. So basically this way it could be many of them, like for the Dragon Quest character, where you have basically all the Dragon Quest heroes as skins. That could be something like that as well, and fighting with the octopus. That could be nice. But yeah, we'll see if the game does really well. I guess maybe it could be a trophy assist, at least.
Oh, yeah. You
never
know.
Already be good. Or a me costume with the octopus.
Awesome. Well, Chris, once again, thanks for joining me on the podcast. Where can people find you and where can people find Tako no Himitsu?
Yeah, thanks for having me. And you can find me basically on most social medias, even TikTok, by using the game demo on Steam and, of course, the Kickstarter campaign. So yeah, the social media I'm more prolific on is Twitter, or X, as we have to say now. But I'm on all of them.
Great. And listeners, the links to everything, including the link to the Kickstarter page, are in the podcast description. So definitely check it out. Once again, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thank you.
Today's feature is on Pokemon Fit Shop XY, a clunky sounding name for a very straightforward event. It was a pop-up shop in Kawasaki featuring the new Pokemon Fit, aka Sitting Cuties line of plushies. Now, by was, I mean they don't have it anymore. So if you want to go to it, I'm sorry, it's gone. Gone forever. Though you can still buy the plushies at any Pokemon Center in Japan and experience the event vicariously through me right now. If you're out of the loop, Pokemon Fit, or Sitting Cuties as they're known in America, is a plushie merch line where the gimmick is that every single Pokemon gets a plush that can fit in the palm of your hand. Yes, every single Pokemon. Jinx, Pineco, Heatmore, all your favorites get a plushie. This is great if you have some obscure favorite Pokemon. Those LGM plushies aren't going to sell out like, say, Charmander. They were originally quite cheap, only about 1,100 yen, which is a good price considering that a lot of the other merch at the Pokemon Centers can easily set you back 2,000 or 3,000 yen. So it's a clever, affordable piece of merch that is a great impulse buy. However, I think the prices have been jacked up, which I'll get to later. The latest release of the Pokemon Fit line is Gen 6, aka Pokemon XY. These hit just a few weeks ago, and the pop-up shop in Kawasaki's Atre department store was made to celebrate this moment. I checked if there were other Pokemon Fit pop-up shops, and Gen 5 did get one at the exact same venue, so I imagine there will be future pop-up shops here as well. Yes, I can just go into any Pokemon Center and buy the same thing, but I was very curious about the theming of the store, and it does have some exclusive items as well. So I headed over to Kawasaki Station, which is only one stop away from Shinagawa Station if you take the express train. Kawasaki is south of Tokyo, but I honestly haven't been there a whole lot. Anytime I head down there, I'm likely going to Yokohama. It was my first time ever at Kawasaki Station. I won't get into my whole trip, But even around Kawasaki Station, there's plenty to do. There's huge department stores, a place that kind of looks like a fake Italian neighborhood, an aquarium, museums, Shotengai shopping streets. It's not a bad day trip at all. That's partly why I love going to all these gaming events in and around Tokyo, because they often bring me to a new place I would have never discovered on my own. But let's get back to the pop-up shop. I got to Kawasaki about 9:15 a.m. and looked around the expansive station that's connected to a lot of department stores, including the one holding the pop-up shop. There were quite a few windows decorated with huge art of the Gen 6 Pokemon, and these looked fantastic. Obviously, I'm a big Pokemon XY fan, and I even featured it on this podcast during its 10th anniversary last year, so definitely go listen to that episode. It is surreal to just be walking around a train station, and oh, here's a huge mural dedicated to a decade-old Pokemon game. The pop-up shop opened at 10 a.m., and although I went during the second weekend of the event, I was certain that it would be pretty busy. And lo and behold, I was right. It was a little hard to find at first, since the line was actually outside the department store building, and the signs weren't exactly helpful. But I got there around 9:30, and people were already lining up. There was probably maybe 20 or 30 people ahead of me. They also gave me a timed entry ticket, but thankfully it was for 10 a.m. Of course, my wife was with me, who isn't a Pokemon fan at all, but she endured. It was fun to see all the other people in line who had plushies with them or other Pokemon apparel, and my wife was easily the person in line who cared the least about Pokemon. After 30 minutes of waiting, we finally got in and walked around this huge spiral that led us into the entrance of the pop-up shop. Due to the timed ticket system, the shop didn't feel crowded. There was plenty of space to move around and take photos. I was worried it would be a mad dash to get Greninja or whoever, but no, there was plenty of stock and the Japanese customers were really orderly and calm. There's a big sign outside the shop showing which Pokemon are sold out, so I imagine later in the day they do run out of stock. Oh, and I forgot to mention, it doesn't just have all the Kalos Pokemon, but all their forms as well. So every Vivillon pattern, all the Furfrou designs, even Zygarde in all his forms, including those that debuted in Sun and Moon. So you can get an incredibly specific plushie if you so choose. They were grouped up thematically, like all the starters were together and all the legendaries were together, but you also got to put Go-Goat somewhere, so there were shelves organized by Pokedex number 2. The pop-up shop was elaborately decorated with Kalos, aka French imagery. Each shelf had a banner on top of it highlighting some aspect of Kalos culture. One was themed after a cafe with a coffee cup adorned with a Pokeball. One was modeled after a flower shop featuring Flabebe. There was a bakery one with Pumpkaboo. I guess it was for pumpkin bread. A perfume shop with Aromatisse. These are small additions, but they really added to the character of the store. It would be a bit boring if it just looked like the inside of a warehouse. But the big decoration was on the back wall, which was modeled after classic French buildings with awnings. There was a little balcony in the middle of the buildings where some of the Pokemon sat. Great photo op. This is why you come to these pop-up shops, for the fun theming and pics. There were also these gigantic banners hung on the roof featuring the legendaries and starter Pokemon, along with big wall coverings of the buildings from the Kalos region. There were also big X and Y statues inside the store. By this, I mean statues of the letter X and the letter Y. I'll let you guess which one was blue and which one was red. Kind of a weird thing to just plop in there, and it was hard to take a picture of since they are transparent. One cool activity, if you can call it that, was this scanner where you place a Pokemon plushie inside, and then on the TV right above it, it shows the Pokedex entry of that Pokemon. Zero idea how this works, unless it just scans the barcode or something, but it is pretty amazing. You put in Sylveon, and then boom, Sylveon shows up on the TV. Uniqlo also has something similar to this, where you put all your clothes in this box, and it magically knows what's inside. Feel free to write in and explain this technology to me because it's just pure magic. Near the outside of the shop was this weird conveyor belt of Pokemon Fit plushies not from Gen 6, not sure why this was here, but the other major activity was Mega Pokemon Gacha. Here you can play a huge gacha machine shaped like a Pokeball. You get a random Pokemon Fit plushie, and they put that plushie inside this inflatable bag shaped like a Pokeball. This has been at some other pop-up shops and even Pokemon centers around Japan. I mean, it does look cool to see the plushie in this weird inflatable bag you can carry around, but it was quite expensive. It's 1,500 yen, and you don't know what Pokemon you're going to get. Also, the selection is about 5 Pokemon. You get Entei or Mew or Chimchar or Aeron. It's just a really random assortment of Pokemon. This also required a timed ticket to use, and I actually did nab one for 11 a.m. while I was in line. But that was because I completely misunderstood. See, when I heard Mega Pokemon Gacha, I assumed it was to get a plushie of a mega Pokemon, like from XY. But no, it's more like mega, Pokemon Gacha. It is strange that there are no mega Pokemon plushies, even though all the forms were represented. I guess they could do a mega Pokemon Fit line later on, once they finish all the generations. What Pokemon did I pick up? I got Greninja and Sylveon, two of my favorites from that generation, and they were all on my championship team. Now, I mentioned earlier that Pokemon Fit plushies were originally the low price of 1,100 yen, but I saw that the plushies here had tiered pricing for whatever reason. Some were 1,400 and some were 1,700. My total was near 4,000 yen for two very small plushies. I don't know if these prices are the same at the other Pokemon centers, or if I paid some secret pop-up shop tax, but if you were looking to save some money, this event wasn't for you. But I do wonder, is the Pokemon Fit stock just ravaged at your normal Pokemon Center? Here they had tons of plushies of all the Pokemon from Gen 6. But at Pokemon Center Shibuya, for example, is Sylveon sold out at like 10:30 a.m.? I definitely see the merits of doing this instead of hitting up a random Pokemon Center if you want to guarantee a specific plushie. Oh, and in terms of exclusive merch, you can get a free cloth bag if you spend 6,000 yen, or a postcard if you spend 2,000 yen. I got a postcard of a Noibat plushie, which I guess is pretty unique, I admit. Valuable? No. Unique? Yes. So that was my excursion to Pokemon Fit Shop XY. It only ran for 2 weeks, so if they do another Pokemon Fit Shop in the future, you've really got a tight window. It was very fun though. I loved the theming, and it was great to see all the plushies of the totally awesome roster of Gen 6. I got to touch some Vivillon patterns I'll never have digitally. As a big XY fan, it was a joyful experience, and it led me to spending a wonderful morning and afternoon around Kawasaki Station. Sadly, I completely forgot to see one of Kawasaki's most notable tourist attractions, the world's smallest escalator. Yes, the shortest usable escalator in the world is in a department store near Kawasaki Station. I completely forgot to go check it out, but there's always next time. Okay, that's it for the feature. Now for some news. We are in a post-direct era, but that doesn't mean that news is slowing down. Let's start with some Tokyo-related news because there are quite a few pop-up shops and limited events happening very, very soon. Dragon Quest Carnival will take place from July 20th at Yokohama's Minato Mirai, around the same area as last year's Pokemon Worlds event. It'll feature a stamp rally, an exhibit focusing on Dragon Quest III HD, a slime coloring activity, a collab cafe, and some DQ decorations around the area. Most of it will be centered around Landmark Plaza, which was where a lot of the Pokemon Worlds events were. This looks pretty awesome, and I'll definitely head over there. I actually already have my reservation for the cafe and slime painting experience. Also starting the same day in Yokohama World Porters is a Pokemon After School Cross Egnam pop-up shop featuring new merch focusing on, I don't know how to describe this. It's girls hanging out after school. It has a very vivid, almost neon art style. There are some photo spots and some merch featuring new art. It's a bit unorthodox for a Pokemon pop-up shop, so hey, during my DQ excursion, I might as well just swing by here as well. That's not all though, as Lalaports all around Japan will also hold a special Splatoon 3 event with exclusive merch, photo spots, and other activities from July 22nd. I think the closest participating Lalaport is in Kawasaki, which is where the XY pop-up shop was, oddly enough. I'll try to make my way out there somehow, some way. And the last upcoming pop-up shop is Mother 2 no Himitsu, or The Secrets of Earthbound, a new pop-up shop event happening at Parco Shibuya featuring never-before-seen documents from the creation of Mother 2, aka Earthbound. This was Hobonichi Mother Project's big event that they were teasing for many, many months. Honestly, I was expecting it to be a bit bigger or a bit more unorthodox, because they were really teasing it as a never-before-seen type of event, but it is really just an exhibit and kind of a pop-up shop. And it's always at the same place as all the other Earthbound pop-up shops. However, it does seem to have a lot of things that people have never ever seen before, and also the original clay figures that are on the instruction manual and also on a lot of the old school Earthbound art and promo pics will be at the exhibit, so you can see them with your own eyes. This is not a free exhibit though, 1,500 yen, and you do need reservations for the first weekend and also during another 3-day weekend later in August, so be aware of that. As for Real Deal Games, Nintendo is cryptically teasing a new M-rated game, possibly called Emio. All Nintendo accounts tweeted out the same images and trailer of a man wearing a paper bag with a smile drawn on it, with the English account asking, "Who is Emio?" The Japanese name also seems to be pronounced Emio, where the E kanji is laugh and the O kanji is man, so it could also be read as smiling man. This is a really out-of-nowhere announcement, and I love how daring Nintendo is with this advertising. They would never do this for, like, Mario and Luigi, for example. But is Nintendo really developing an M-rated horror game? Or are they just publishing a game from a third-party developer? A lot of people have been throwing out the word Bloober Team. Either way, it seems to be very unorthodox. Yes, Nintendo has released M-rated games before, and even horror titles like Fatal Frame and Eternal Darkness, but it is strange to see them return to the genre either way. And this wasn't in the Nintendo Direct, which is pretty odd. They opted for the mysterious drip feed announcement over featuring it in a Direct, so I wonder why that is. You'd think that revealing a game in a Direct would be the best way to go about it, but maybe this game is stranger than we think. Nintendo Kyoto also recently revealed brand new merch items from local artisans in Kyoto. We got some stationery, a tote bag, woodblock prints, a fan. Now, the most interesting element of this new merch line is that it's only at Nintendo Kyoto, not Nintendo Osaka, not Nintendo Tokyo. I wonder if this sets a precedent for exclusive merch at the stores. Pokemon Center already does this, but they do typically cycle the merch to the other stores every now and then. Does this mean there will be some items that you can only get at Nintendo Tokyo and not in Kansai? Obviously, Kyoto is kind of a special case because that is Nintendo's home base, so if any store is going to get exclusive goods, it would likely be that one. But I would like to see a bit of diversity in exclusive items every now and then, just to make the store feel a bit more special. Natsu-mon is getting an English release on August 6th. This is the spiritual successor to the Boku no Natsu-yasumi franchise, and it's from the same developers. You're a boy living out summer vacation in an idyllic Japanese countryside town, but it seems to be far more open and freeform than past Boku no Natsu-yasumi titles. I think a lot of people were expecting an eventual English release since it's not officially connected to the Boku no Natsu-yasumi franchise, and it serves as a very clear entry point into this type of game. Now, the Nintendo Direct announced a new expansion for Natsu-mon in Japan, but the English version just seems to be the base game, and I can imagine the English version of the DLC will come over eventually. I think I could theoretically get this game cheaper in Japan, and it would probably be better to play in Japanese, but I am very curious how they localize it, so I think I'll try to pick up an English copy. Last bit of news, Nintendo Switch Online is back and better than ever with new NES and Famicom games. Urban Champion, Golf, DK Jr. Math, Mach Rider, The Mystery of Atlantis, which is the first ever release for the West, Solar Jetman, and Cobra Triangle. Japan is also getting Gomoku Narabe Renju, which is a Go game, Shin Onigashima, which is a fairly notable Japanese-only title, and Mahjong. No, this is not Yakuman, this is Mahjong. We are nearing the end of the 40th anniversary of the Famicom celebration in Japan, so I can see this being the one last big hurrah for the Famicom in terms of new NSO games. Which of these should you play? Well, Golf is a classic, but NES Open is just easier to parse and understand. Urban Champion is a novelty in that some consider it to be the worst Nintendo-developed title, and it's certainly not good, but worst is a very strong word. I would say it's at least worth checking out, so you can just say you played it, though. But that's not the only NSO news. The first 3 original Densetsu no Starfy games are now available in the West and in Japan. I think a lot of people know the legendary Starfy, the DS game, but that is actually the 5th Starfy game. If you've never played the Starfy series, it's closer to Kirby than, say, Mario, and it stars Starfy, which I think most people know as an assist trophy in Smash Bros. So if you want to know Starfy's origins, now you can check it out. This is a series I've always been meaning to cover on this podcast, and now I can finally dig into the GBA titles. They are a little expensive in Japan, so I'm glad that they were eventually just uploaded for quote-unquote free on NSO. So please look forward to my future Starfy episode. Maybe this year, we will see. Okay, that's all for now. Thanks as always for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast on your favorite app. Leave a 5-star review as well. It really helps with visibility. This podcast is also available on YouTube, so like and subscribe there as well. I'm on Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, Instagram. Just search for Tokyo Game Life or find the links in the podcast description. If you like the podcast, be sure to share with your friends and on social media. If there's anything you want me to talk about or cover, don't be shy, just message me on Twitter. The next episode will be on July 28th. See you next time. Matane!